Hold the phone, everyone. We've got crazy archaeology news that I just couldn't wait to share with you. We've got Mount Vesuvius, Herculaneum, and AI all in one headline, which is a lot to unpack. So let's dig into it. These are the Herculaneum papyri. Over 1,800 papyrus scrolls discovered in the 18th century in the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum, an ancient Roman town that was buried under ash by the same eruption from Mount Vesuvius as Pompeii in 79 CE. This collection contains a large amount of Greek philosophical texts, predominantly from Philodemus of Gadara, and is technically the only surviving library that exists in its entirety from antiquity, which is pretty amazing in and of itself. But the issue is, reading these burnt and carbonized scrolls is an extremely difficult task. Imagine trying to unroll something like this brittle, misshapen lump to read it. Well, I'll tell ya, we tried. Ever since the discovery of the first 4 scrolls in 1752, multiple methods have been employed to try and see what's inside these scrolls. Early attempts to unstick the thin, fragile layers of papyrus employed rosewater, liquid mercury, careful with that one, vegetable gas, sulfuric compounds, papyrus juice, which is kind of cannibalistic if you ask me, and even a mixture of ethanol, glycerin, and warm water, all in an attempt to unravel these scrolls and make them readable. People even took to slicing them in half to get to what was inside. The problem is, opening a scroll often damages or destroys the scroll completely, especially that slicing method. Also, the ink used on most of these scrolls was essentially carbon-based, and when it is exposed to air, it fades. So that means even the machine invented by Abbot Piaggio, the conservator of ancient manuscripts in the Vatican Library in the 1700s, proved useless. It also took him 4 years from the year 1756 to unroll the first ever scroll because it had to be done millimeters a day. And from there, everything then had to be copied before the writing completely disappeared. That truly must have been the longest 4 years of that man's life. Furthermore, unrolling the scrolls often led to pages sticking together and even more tearing. So, you get the idea. Unrolling the scrolls is just a bad idea. That being said, quite a few have been unrolled, copied, and translated to some extent. So far, we've been able to determine that the Herculaneum papyri hold vital classical texts, some of which we don't even have any other evidence for. For example, segments of the Stoic philosopher Chrysippus, who has apparently written over 700 works that have all been lost to time, except for a few fragments quoted by other authors, have been found. And in 2018, it was announced that fragments from a lost work from Seneca the Elder, called Histories, has been found on scroll P. Herc 1067. Since the majority of classical texts that other classical authors reference and refer to are lost, there's hope that some of these legendary works lie hidden in the Herculaneum papyri, waiting to be unraveled. The papyri are still being studied today, and now we're even using modern technology to help us see inside them without posing further risk of damage from unrolling. That's where multispectral imaging and shortwave infrared hyperspectral imaging come in to help digitize the scrolls. These are techniques that help in spotting ink because it has a different infrared reflective band from the papyrus. The latest fad, though, is a process called virtual unrolling. First came specialized X-rays, micro-CT scans, and nuclear magnetic resonance to see the interior structure of the scrolls, but no ink can be seen with micro-CT imaging, just as a FYI. And then came along Brent Seals, a computer scientist at the University of Kentucky, and in 2016 he successfully used virtual unrolling to read text on a charred parchment. Don't ask me the exact details because the process is way too techie for me, but I will say it does involve particle accelerators and artificial intelligence. This is the kind of stuff we need to be using AI for. More scientific breakthroughs, please, and less using it to write your high school essays. In 2023, classical scholar Richard Janko announced that he and Seals' team used artificial intelligence to read a small part of a previously unreadable and heavily damaged text from the Herculaneum papyri, and it appears that it is part of a lost work about Alexander the Great and the Diadochi, the rival families that fought for control over Alexander's empire after his death. Which brings me to today. I know it took a minute, but I gotta give you all the background info so you can properly appreciate how monumental this news is. We officially have new texts, titles and authors recovered from the carbonised Herculaneum Scrolls in the first successful end-to-end virtual unwrapping of not one, but 2 scrolls. There are other scrolls virtually unwrapped using this technology, but we're not going to go into them today. A competition called the Vesuvius Challenge, aimed at deciphering the Herculaneum Scrolls using 3D X-ray software, has announced this breakthrough discovery just this week. Literally this morning. Researchers virtually unwrapped the entirety of scroll P. Herc 1667 stored at the National Library of Naples, revealing almost 1.5 meters of text written across 20 columns. This is a quantum leap in progress because the scroll was deemed completely unreadable when scholars tried to open it in the 1980s using a mixture of gelatin and acetic acid in hopes of softening it, but then instead they ended up destroying half of it in the process, and only a few isolated letters ended up becoming visible. Federica Nicolardi, assistant professor in papyrology at the Università degli Studi di Napoli Federico II, says that scroll P. Herc 1667 is only half as tall as it once was, measuring approximately 8 centimeters high, and it is only about 2 centimeters in diameter. So you can only imagine how large the scroll would have been when it was first written. By looking at the scroll's handwriting, Nicolardi has also dated P. Herc 1667 to the 2nd or possibly even the late 3rd century BCE, making it one of the oldest scrolls in the collection, but also one of the oldest Roman scrolls ever to survive today. While we don't know the author of this text, the contents do fit with the overall philosophical theme of the Herculaneum collection. Proposed authors could be Epicurus, one of his followers perhaps, or Chrysippus. Or it could be someone completely new that we haven't even heard of before. From what the papyrological team have been able to translate and analyze from this half-cut-off text, it does appear to be some sort of philosophical treatise concerned with ethics, arts, and human behavior. And it's likely that it was of the Stoic nature, which, if it is, it's probably then not Epicurus then, because he was all about the quiet, simple, fulfilled life. I saw someone call his beliefs rational hedonism online, and I find that best sums up Epicureanism. But because this text was found in a collection of mostly Epicurean texts, we can't quite yet rule out this school of thought. If it's a Stoic text, on the other hand, the team believes it could be from Chrysippus, the 3rd head of the Stoic school of philosophy. As I mentioned earlier, very little of his own work survives today, so that means a new text like this being attributed to him would be extremely useful in understanding more about early Stoicism. Among other concepts, the author of P. Herc 1667 seems to warn the reader against excessive impulse when reason fails to regulate behavior and leads to a harmful diversion from one's goals. And honestly, that's solid advice. But I'm not here to wax poetic about philosophy. We have another scroll to discuss. Yes, we have a second major breakthrough in this news update, the identification of a new book title from scroll P. Herc 139. In the final portion of this virtually unwrapped scroll, papyrologists were able to read the title Philodemus, On Gods, Book 8. This is absolutely revolutionary because we can date the scroll to between the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE, and we now know that On Gods was a work that spanned at least 8 books. Until now, only the first book of On Gods was known from scroll P. Herc 26, so we've got a lot more books to find. Honestly, a find like this just really shines a big old magnifying glass on just how much ancient literature we're missing. It's rather scary when you sit with it for more than a minute. Anyways, knowing that On Gods is a multi-book work means that scholars are now reassessing other related texts from the Herculaneum papyri collection that address similar themes to see if they too could belong to this series, which in turn can teach us more about the philosophical concepts that were floating around ancient Rome at the time. Fingers crossed we find a few more of these puzzle pieces in the near future. Now, I've tried to not make this video very techy, and the technical information is out there for those who do wish to dive into this more, but I do hope that what I've told you stresses that a breakthrough like this is more than just a technical feat. Through work like this, historians are now able to discover voices from 2,000 years ago that were previously lost forever to to the ashes of Vesuvius. We're gaining new texts, new data, and new insight into the big thinkers of the ancient Greco-Roman world. Right now, it is the closest we can get to glimpsing inside their minds, and this is only the beginning. We only used to get fragments and scraps when a piece of a scroll could be separated. But now we're getting multiple columns, and we're getting larger chunks of arguments and ideas that we can follow and understand as more complete compositions. We've gone from simply reading to understanding, and this changes the entire study of the ancient world at its core. This has been decades of work and insane levels of international collaboration in the making, and now with this level of technology, the Lost Library of Herculaneum will slowly but surely begin to unravel even more of its secrets. And you can actually get involved. The Vesuvius Challenge is still ongoing, and they've created a new website called scrollprize.org for individuals to access the data from their virtual unwrappings and participate in solving the problems the team are facing in recovering the Lost Library of Herculaneum. So if you're interested and know about machine learning, computer vision, or even pattern recognition, check out their website. They've got some great tutorials on there as well if you're just keen on learning more about how all of this works. More than 600 Herculaneum papyri remain unopened, and as more and more get virtually unraveled, they're going to need classicists, they're going to need papyrologists, historians, and all those types of people to tackle this crazy amount of data. This kind of successful and necessary crossover between the humanities and science is exactly what we need in today's climate, where humanities departments are being cut left, right, and center from universities, and arts degrees aren't seen as useful as STEM degrees anymore. It's one thing to scan the text and shoot the lasers, but it's another to read and understand them. I see this technological development as almost a full circle moment for these texts. We went from full parchments to burnt fragments, and now we're getting that full picture back as much as we can. These scholars are bringing ancient voices back to life, and I, for one, cannot wait to hear what they have to say. There we have it, friends. Another amazing archaeology news update for you. If you liked that, go ahead and smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. You know what to do already. And as always, stay dirty, my friends.